Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. Hastily arranged Sunday night recording because everybody associated with this podcast is busy on Monday and Tuesday night as well. 4 changes to the Aberdeen lineup, Phil. 4 goals conceded. You hoped for some positivity on the show after the game, but I don't think it's really going to be filled with much, is it?
No, I think the best way to describe that was deflating, more than anything. And I think, I think that's the overwhelming feeling on the back of that one. I think, especially going into to what are 3 very, very big games for the remainder of our season.
Yeah, and of course, 3 big games, you could argue, in the space of 6 days, as well as the league's season heads towards its conclusion. But as I said, 4 changes from Jimmy Thelin to the starting lineup. Christers Tobers returning for the unwell Alfie Dorrington, although watching Tobers made me feel particularly unwell. A first league start for a long time for Dante Polvara in the midfield as well. A rare start for Obde Dabag in league action, replacing Kevin Nisbet as well. And Jeppe Ockels continuing on the wing with Toby Keskin and Shaden Morris missing out on this occasion. For me, that defence in particular, when I saw the lineup, maybe not so much up top, but I thought a bit concerning. When you see the results from Saturday, obviously, providing we'd gone and got a result today, would have kept those third placed hopes alive. But really, since our goal difference took a pounding today, it feels like that's all but ended as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the main thing today. If anything was going to happen, especially if you were going to lose, try and not lose in the manner that we did. I think it's, as Callum put in our chat, I think it's tatties over the side for third place. And it's a bit of a tough one. Like you say, I think top end of the pitch potentially changes we were expecting, but I just don't think they really had any of the impact we hoped. And I think Tobers was in a rather unfortunate position where obviously he's not played much minutes since his injury, and he was kind of thrown in. Which in my opinion, I don't know. I know that Jack Milne's maybe not an out and out centre half, but at least he's had those minutes off the bench. And I think that really showed in Tober's performance. He just didn't look anywhere near as assured as he did, obviously, when we were singing his praises when he first came into the team. And he will get back there. I don't think there's any doubt about it. But he didn't really cover himself in much glory, even prior to conceding the goals today.
Yeah, I don't think the right hand side of our defence covered itself in much glory at all. Nicky Devlin, as I said, looked a player that's really not played a lot of minutes. Obviously, with Alex Jensen being on the bench as well, some will ask the question, well, if he's fit enough to be on the bench, is he not fit enough to start? And you could have then utilised Devlin off the bench. Similarly, as you stated as well, around Jack Milne, again, I agree with the point. He may not be an out-and-out centre back, but again, I suppose maybe the flip side on Jack Milne as well could be he too hasn't had as much minutes recently as well. But in terms of the first half, yes, I thought defensively we looked nervous. Mitov's distribution was that floaty balls out to the wing are doing my head in. But the top half, Ockles and Dabag, both feeding off scraps. People will say that with the cup final coming up, people are playing for places. Certainly, based on today, nobody in that 11, and including the subs, looked like they were playing themselves into contention for a starting place on the 24th of May.
Yeah, no, it just seemed, I don't know what it was. It was just so timid in fear. I mean, I get that you're going to have periods where you soak up the pressure, playing at Ibrox, but it just felt a bit too defeatist right off the bat. I think when we did have the chances to kind of break free, nobody really supported, like Dabag, Kesker, and Ockles, McGrath, whoever might have been making that forward run. No one was supporting them for the most part. A lot of sort of turning back to play backwards instead of actually try to kick on and take the game to them a little bit. It just sort of felt just very negative at times. And I think that was the frustrating thing. I think especially with the way that results might end up going, it was a game where we had to really kind of try and put in that performance, even just from a
Yeah.
confidence standpoint, let alone a result one. So it was rather frustrating. And I think can't be bothered has highlighted my my pining love for Jeppe Ockels. He didn't have the best game today, admittedly, but I think it was a real, I think it was a real tough one for whoever was in that front line. I just think we just didn't have anything going forward today.
Yeah, someone messaged me on Instagram slating Dante Polvara, saying that we can't laud him anymore because his performance was a bit of a myth. To be honest, I really find it difficult to single out individual players to be the worst from that because as a collective, I think they were all just as bad as each other. For nobody deserves any pass marks from that performance today. But as much as we've always said, during that tough run under Jimmy Thelin, the players are going to have to absorb a lot of criticism and take a lot of flack. I'll come back to them in a second, but how much is today equally on the manager? Because again, given the nature of the performance on the back of an equally poor performance in Paisley, he's coming in for a lot of flack this evening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's really avoidable. I think the changes were potentially slightly odd. I know there's an eye to the fact we're playing a lot of football over this sort of week period, and that's probably influenced it. But I think Tobers coming in was maybe a little bit too soon. I think Polvara was a welcome addition, but I think to be sitting in that sort of deeper pair with Clarkson was maybe
It's not his
ill-advised
style.
potentially. Yeah, I think if he was further up, because I feel like we, as much as I slate Pape most weeks on here, but I feel like we kind of missed having that extra physical presence sort of up there for the outball, because that tended to be how we
Mhm.
played so often in that game, was to try and hit it long in behind, or hit it for Dabag to try and hold it up, which again I also don't think is really his style of play. It all just felt a little bit square peg round hole for a lot of it. I thought McGrath played quite well. Keskinen showed signs of trying to do bits and bobs here and there, but again, I think he is a frustrating player to watch at times.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think as a collective, it just kind of felt very flat for the most part.
Yeah, I mean it's fair to highlight Topi doing bits and bobs as you said. The effort he has in the first half. Yes, it's a shot on target, but probably lacked any real conviction. Unlucky in the start of the second half, finding the bottom of the post. You could argue he should go across the goalkeeper. I think Pape is guilty of that as well with his opportunity in the second half. There was real kind of lack of conviction or belief maybe in the final third again, which is a huge concern for me heading towards that Scottish Cup final. But the biggest concern has to be the capitulation and the way we were really brushed aside once we went 1-0 down. The manner of the first goal, the gap, the parting of the Red Sea, as Ian Watson said to me, between Tobers and Knoesters is absolutely criminal. And if I was Rio Hatate and Callum McGregor, I'd be absolutely licking my lips seeing that space in between centre backs, because those two are going to have a field day picking off the space for the likes of Maeda, Ida, Kuhn to run into in 2 weeks' time. And equally, the second goal, I know likely Nicky Devlin's not going to play in that Scottish Cup final, but he gets caught high up the pitch. Tobers, I'm pretty sure, has already sailed to next week. That's how early he dived in, allowing Nico Raskin all the time in the world to pick Cyril Dessers out for 2-0. But I mean, the level of defending for those two goals was criminal, but equally, well, I said to Keith, what reaction going 1-0 down? How our players acted after going 1-0 down is equally criminal and, to be honest, inexcusable, because it really felt like they gave up.
Yeah, no, I mean, even before the actual official goals had went in, that first goal that got disallowed,
Mhm.
you almost felt like, the wind was just entirely sucked out of us. Okay, we go up and sort of have our own goal disallowed at the other end of the pitch. But I mean, that first Dessers goal, it's a carbon copy of the goal he scored against Celtic. The ball
Mhm.
comes in, somebody dummies it, and he's 1-on-1 with the keeper. And I don't know how he's just allowed to do it for the second week in a row, and nobody reacts to it. But like you say, the first two, um, just absolute schoolboy stuff. I mean, all the goals were really just schoolboy stuff. Nobody wanted to take accountability. Everybody seemed to want to sort of shirk from any sort of responsibility. And I think that was kind of evident towards the end with Meathoff going absolutely off his head. Whether he made a save or didn't make a save or somebody didn't track a man, I think
Mhm.
he was quite right to do so.
Yeah.
Just everything was just so amateurish at times.
Yeah, I mean, the third goal is extremely amateurish. It's a bit to me to you between Knoesters and Polvara, no one really wanting to take any responsibility. Any blame for you on Mitov for the third goal? I think McInnes said that at full time he should do better. My initial reaction was more disappointment at him not keeping it out, but then you see the defending, and we really shouldn't have been in a situation where the ball even falls to Egamane in the first place. There's nothing he can do for the fourth, but yeah, any blame for you on Mitov for that third?
I mean, he potentially could get over a little bit quicker and get a little bit of a stronger hand to it than what he does. But at the same time, like you say, I think the ball shouldn't make its way there anyway. I mean, it's
Mhm.
the exact same as Haji's goal at Pataudry in the 2-2. Really, the ball shouldn't make its way there,
Yeah.
and it does. And I think you've got to stop it at the root more than anything.
Mhm.
As good a keeper as Meatov is, when he's under as much pressure as he had been, especially in that second half. I mean, some of the saves he pulled out to save it going to 5 or 6. Um, he has to get a little bit of help from everyone around him.
Yeah, I know the resident Rangers fan that tunes into this podcast is watching, but he does make a good point by saying Mitov stopped at being 10. And yeah, I mean, without Dimitar Mitov, there is a few good saves in there that did keep it from being a bit of a cricket score. I wanted to, as I said, as much as Jimmy Tillin's going to come in for criticism, rightly or wrongly, from Aberdeen fans on the back of two poor performances, one thing he highlighted in his post-match press conference on Red TV was the manner in which the team played as individuals. After going 1-0 down, they didn't play as a team, something that they need to look at. For me, that was some of the comments within that press conference or interview, whatever you want to call it, were a bit concerning. That I know he's not one for throwing players under the bus or even apologising to the fans, which I kind of suspected he might based on that performance. Um, it, it's how do we get this group of players motivated for finishing fourth, but also get them up for a cup final? Because really, we've spoken about games like these players should be motivated for. They should have been motivated in Paisley last week, but there seems to be a huge spark missing, which is contrary to what Dave Cormack and Jimmy Thelin were singing that we would see at that Player of the Year event 10 days ago.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the frustrating thing. I mean, how often have we heard it? We say it, people say it on social media, the players have said it themselves, the manager said it. Every game is a cup final between, the start of the split and the end of the season. And if that's the way we're getting ourselves up for cup finals, in
Yeah.
inverted commas, I dreading to think what the motivation levels are going to be like come the 24th of May. But yeah, it just beggars belief, really. And like you say, I think probably Goody's not individually targeted anyone, because we all saw how that worked for Neil Warnock. But I think in terms of trying to G everybody up, it's one thing Jimmy's been good at is kind of shielding the players from sort of criticism and blame, and sort of taking that on his own back. Um, so it is a little bit of a strange one, especially at this point in the season, to see him being so vocally critical of the players.
Yeah, maybe as Can't Be Bothered says, we're just luring Celtic into a false sense of security. But for others, it'll be luring folk into what the hell have we done, parting with all that money for the cup final in 2 weeks' time. And I think that's, again, for me, the biggest disappointment. I know in one of the group chats I'm in, a couple of people saying, you know, what are we going down to that cup final for in a couple of weeks if that's the level of performance we're being met with just now? And I think, what was it, the stat that Ian Crocker rolled out at the start of the game, or certainly in the first half, that we've only won 6 of our last 109 games in Glasgow against Celtic and Rangers. I mean, that is alarming in itself.
I don't know what it is. I mean, like I was kind of saying today when I was watching it and out in a beer garden. Thankfully, at least the sun was a positive as opposed to the game. But um, it just seems to be like, regardless of any sort of positive improvement that Jimmy has made, which he has in terms of the playing squad,
Mhm.
there still just seems to be that mental blocker and mental weakness when it comes to playing against Celtic and Rangers, and even more so playing at the likes of Hampden and down in Glasgow. There just seems to be this frailty where we just can't seem to get over the hurdle. And I don't know what it will take to actually change that. 'Cause, I mean, we've brought in all these players from outside of the UK and outside of Scotland who, don't really know anything, about the sort of overall history and Celtic and Rangers and the SFA conspiracies and this, that, and the next thing. They're very much outside sources, and that's not made any difference into the mental side of the game against them. So it's tough to see where that changes. And really, if we are wanting to sort of have that sort of mantle as the third biggest team and be playing in cup finals and be getting European qualification, it's a hurdle we have to cross sooner rather than later.
hmm And I think, mentality is one thing I did want to speak about. And obviously, when you were speaking about it there, I brought on the comment on screen for those watching the video on YouTube from West Coast Don, who was actually at the game. So I don't know if now tuning into this episode is better or worse after standing through 90 minutes at Ibrox. Says, it was a crap performance by us, no grit or sense of urgency. Our team's mental strength isn't good enough. We're not physical enough. We can all see what's missing. And it was the mental strength that I wanted to speak about. Obviously, you touched on there about, players maybe not understanding, and I don't really want to get into that too much tonight because I know passions will be running high. But the mental side of it, more when we go 1-0 down, for me is a bit of a concern, and how easy teams then seem to pick us apart if they go 1-0 up against us. That's something that needs to be rectified. Probably can't be in 2 weeks' time, but certainly going towards next season. And I suppose on that as well, people will also be looking for Jimmy Thelin to have more of a plan B for next season as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you could see that from Rangers again. The same thing happened as at Pittodrie. They went to sort of two up top, and we just seemed to struggle to cope at all. When Igaman came on, he just seemed to absolutely run the show for them in terms of getting the ball forward. Um, and again, it's something that I just don't think we currently have. It's
Mhm.
changes come on, the shape stays the same, the tactics don't really change. Again, it's this sort of, square peg round hole situation where it feels like we're just kind of jamming players in and just trying to get them to work instead of actually trying to mold around where they would benefit. I think Pape came on, made a little bit of luck with him sort of holding the ball up, but again, we had nobody really going beyond him to make
I
any
mean,
use of it.
yeah, he came on and was all right for 5-10 minutes, but then also he skinned somebody and then passed the ball away straight away and then just chucked his hands in the air and didn't track the ball back. It was like he couldn't be bothered. But as I said, there's a lot of individual poor performances from today. Um, I can't remember the point I was going to make there that you were starting with, which is really annoying me just now. Um, I'll try and think back what I was going to say, but
Two up top
in
for Rangers, perhaps.
no, it was going to be with the view to obviously losing today and in the manner that we've lost. We've now given up that kind of, okay, it was only 4 goals, but we've given that cushion up to Dundee United, so it's now just straight 3 points, no goals in it between them. How do we mentally recover and pick ourselves up off the canvas going into Wednesday night? And how do you, from an Aberdeen fan point of view, we'll maybe come and look at Jimmy Tillin's method of thinking, if we can, feel about approaching that game? A lot of people will say, look, play the kids, rest some of the players, give them minutes off. But or should we now accept that that's third place over after today?
I think we should. I think the goal difference is entirely unassailable now. It's a 3 point difference. Um, even if we get back, I mean, even beating Celtic 1-0, you're still looking at what would it be about a 19 goal difference between us and Hibs. It
Yeah.
effectively is an extra point. um, at this rate. So I think third is gone in my opinion now. Try to bounce back from that, and you've got to play Celtic is the worst scenario you really could have had. And I mean they'll be right up for it now and see it as another dagger they can put in,
Hmm.
before going to Hampden. If they can come and play us off the park and put two or three past us, it's immediately 1-0 to them at Hampden, in terms of the mental aspect of the game.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough one to try and bounce back from. And it then just puts all this added pressure, on the game at Tannadice at the end of the season. If Dundee United come away from Ibrox with even a point, it makes it a winner bust really for fourth place.
Yeah, it certainly is going to really liven up that Dundee United game, which is going to be a shambles in itself for ticket sales tomorrow or today if you're listening to this episode on Monday. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to listen to this and depress your Monday even more, but thank you, I guess, if you are. In terms of how you see us approaching that game, because let's put today to one side, because I don't think we can really go into it too much more than just say, as you said,
Sure.
deflating and depressing. Yeah. Do you agree with the sentiment that we should ring the changes? Because who've Dundee United got? Dundee United have got Rangers at Ibrox. I
Mhm.
don't even know.
Yep.
Um, I think regardless of the result on Wednesday night, it's going to be a straight shootout on um, Sunday between us and Dundee United for fourth place. St Mirren aren't getting anything from Parkhead on Trophy Day, let's be honest. Um, so, what would be your view to Wednesday night's game? Ring the changes or tell players to go out there and you've mentioned Celtic will be looking to try and get one up on us. Is this our chance to try and do that to them?
I mean, potential thing with Celtic is it goes one or two ways. I mean, remember when they got scudded in the Champions League, and all thought, brilliant, they're on their knees, and then they went and scudded us at Hampden.
Yeah.
So it goes one or two ways whenever you beat Celtic, but um, it's
Well,
a
look at
tough
St
one.
Johnson, what they did before they faced them at Hampden. You could
Well,
argue about us as
exactly,
well in October at Parkhead.
exactly. Um, so it's a tough one. I mean, I think the problem with ringing the changes, I think players will then just know their stop gaps. Really, they'll probably know they've been rung in the sense of saving players for Dundee United and Hampden, that they probably won't have as big of a shoe in. And I think the same way as well as you're then potentially risking yourself to complete new partnerships, maybe younger players that aren't as experienced, and then you do get turned over potentially.
Is it the worst thing though? I mean, without sounding like I'm advocating players going in 2-footed to challenges, but chucking in a few of the fringe players, maybe players that are a bit motivated than what we saw today to try and stake a claim. But, you know, I'm really not going to be against if we're a total bunch of shithouses and rough up Celtic on Wednesday night because they went full strength against Hibs at the weekend, but I also think we have to be honest and say that they're probably likely to ring the changes, if not midweek, certainly at the weekend, because they've got the luxury to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose they've had their injury troubles as well. Obviously, Jota out for the remainder. I think Carter Vickers, I think, was apparently nursing a little bit of a hamstring issue as well. So, they'll probably want to be cautious. Um, I do still just think it's such a tough line to draw because I mean, you want Aberdeen to win every game, and the way you do that is by, you know, putting out your sort of best possible team. Um, and as much as we're maybe all already thinking it's going to be a very long Wednesday evening.
Hmm.
Um, it still is a game that has a big comeback on the season. I mean, St Mirren beat Hibs; they're then within 2 points of us as well. So it does become a really sticky game. I mean, we beat Celtic on Flag Day, thanks to Sir Andrew, one season. So I'm not totally discounting the fact that St Mirren could pull something ridiculous off. So every game, despite it even being Celtic, becomes a game where we really need to be out there and trying to win at all costs.
I mean, it's unthinkable right now finishing sixth in the league, but if we do, I would have to say our league season would be a complete feeling of disappointment. Um, Joe Anderson is asking for the game on Wednesday. Can we take hope from the fact it's being played at Pittodrie, where we're clearly better, currently unbeaten at Pittodrie since January? Before you answer Jando's point, I want to come back to our away record because, again, something that's concerning potentially ahead of the Dundee United game, which we will speak about because we may not be able to reconvene between Wednesday night's game and Saturday's final game of the season unless someone else wants to jump in and fill you and Callum's shoes, is we've only won 5 away games in the league this season, all coming against the bottom 3, 2 wins against Ross County, 2 at Dundee and St Johnstone on the opening day of the season. So not only mentality needs improved, but our away form needs improving for next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because I think it was something that early on in the season we all thought was kind of fixed. I mean, it had been the sort of case for a little bit that our home form was superb. Even prior to Jimmy coming in, our home form was kind of tying us over. Um,
Mm.
but our away form was kind of where we crumbled. And I think it is a bit of a shame because we do travel in good numbers. And quite often it's been the case of, 3 points have became 1 or 1 point has became nothing in
Yeah.
the last few minutes of a game. So it is rather unfortunate, but yeah, maybe a little bit of comfort perhaps taken in the fact this is at home and our away form has been so abysmal. But again, it's just I keep on coming back to the fact that it's just the worst possible game to come into on the back of on the back of this in terms of trying to get players, get fans, get everybody sort of motivated. But maybe they'll surprise us. It's the last home game of the season, so try and go out with
Yeah.
a bang.
Yeah, and we can't even blame Player of the Year for the performance at the weekend as well. So I'm not sure what some section of the sport are going to blame today's defeat on. Looking towards the cup final, David McLennan suggests for Wednesday night to play the cup final lineup and put the plan into practice as such. I suppose that potentially depends on if Alfie Dorrington's feeling better, because certainly based on today, I would much rather Alfie Dorrington in at centre back. What fitness level is Alexander Jensen at? Can he only manage half an hour? Because again, I suspect Alexander Jensen would start in there. Do you think that's a possibility? Because for at least us to focus on our own game, which Jimmy Thelin likes to speak about, because again, there's a few of you in the comments suggesting that Celtic will rest players and maybe look to play a weaker team. Do you agree with David's comment that we should maybe look to do that and play the cup final team and put into practice what we're hoping to achieve on the 24th?
Yeah, I think it's definitely viable, and it could potentially be. I mean, I suppose the drawback you have there is showing your hand early, especially. Not that I think anything will be really different. Jimmy's not exactly a Claudio Ranieri and a bit of a tinker man that'll change things all the time. But if he is planning to go something different in terms of shape or personnel, you maybe don't want to show your hand too early.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe keep that again element of surprise that kind of done so well at the start of the season, where I think teams sort of struggled to adapt to us. So it's an interesting one. I think that you could make a case of going through the motions and sort of making sure that the sort of shape and the line and everything's in the correct places when you are soaking up the pressure and making sure that's drilled in. But again, we do it most weeks. We try and prophesize what Jimmy's going to pull out the hat, and we've never once
Well,
got it
Mr. Right.
right. Yeah, we've never once got it right. I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see the way it does go down. I think Celtic will rotate as well, which I think will be the kind of kicker for us a little bit. Especially when they come and line up with a full strength
Yeah.
team come Hampden.
I mean, David McLennan says he doesn't think we're going to surprise anyone. I'm not sure, David, if you're meaning on Wednesday night or the cup final, because if we're speaking about the cup final still, then I think the biggest surprise would be if we turned up and lifted the trophy, certainly based on the last 2 performances. I think, though, for Wednesday night, I think you do make a good point. We don't want to kind of show our hand too early. We saw in the first 45 minutes today, though, an absolutely terrible game of football from both sides. It has to be said. That typical end of season feel. Do you think Wednesday has the potential to follow a similar path again, with players potentially trying to protect themselves from injury ahead of the cup final on both sides as well. Celtic have nothing to play for. We obviously do, but obviously there's that little bit of, as I said, protecting ourselves potentially for the weekend against Dundee United, but also that cup final as well.
Yeah, I think there will be a slight element of that, and obviously players who maybe haven't got contracts shored up yet try to maybe keep themselves safe for moves elsewhere, etc. But again, I think it'll be a tough one. I can see Celtic maybe trying to sort of kick us while we're down in a way, and try and get that sort of mental early goal before going into Hampden and sticking one to us. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see sort of how both teams kind of approach it. Because I think the last thing I kind of want is us to just kind of sit in and try and go damage
Mhm.
limitation from early doors, because I think that
Yeah.
will just end up in a cricket score, regardless of who Celtic put out on the pitch.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know the last time at Pittodrie, we didn't really kind of sit in, but we did soak up a lot of pressure, and then it was just one, really good pass and finish from Rio Hatate that was the difference. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how we approach Wednesday night in that sense. And yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to get motivated for Wednesday night, let alone the cup final just now. And I think as well the fact we failed to score in the last two games as well, more so the game against St Mirren today, obviously unlucky with hitting the post. Pape's, for me, he's got to do a little bit better with a couple of chances he's had as well. Obde Dabag in the first half unlucky being offside as well. So we're getting into the final third, but we're still not being clinical enough, and we really need to see that. If not on Wednesday, certainly at Tannadice, where we head to after that game on Wednesday. As I said, we'll touch on it briefly because we may or may not be able to pull an episode together with the short turnaround between the game on Wednesday and Saturday. So, in terms of looking ahead to that game, I want to speak about the ticket allocation first and foremost. The Dons allocation cut by 1,000 due to safety concerns, which I don't think we can really have any complaints about, due to the idiot throwing the ball in Jim Goodwin's direction. No real surprise that came. I think we spoke that was likely going to happen on the back of the game. I think the real surprise for me is the way that the tickets are being sold through Dundee United's portal, and then advising where certain fans should and shouldn't sit, a la the ultras down in the lower section with the families and the disabled fans being put there as well. It kind of feels very strange way of not only selling the tickets, but also the way the Aberdeen fans are being kind of policed for this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a right, again, not surprised the allocation's been cut due to the bottle being thrown. I think all of it could be avoided if they just gave us the shed.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if anyone watched Sports Scene, but it was absolutely empty against St Mirren. But no doubt it'll probably be packed against us when a big team comes to town. But yeah, very strange. I've seen that the ultras are already sort of saying they're just not going to go in the lower section, which again probably makes sense. I mean, that just seems like a disaster waiting to happen, as is mixing the ultras with the sort of family section.
Yeah.
Kind of defeats the purpose of a family section, I suppose. Um, and then yeah, like you say, I think the whole e-tickets and through a portal. Aberdeen somehow try to police it with priority points as well. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just going to end in absolute disaster. I'm just happy I've got mine through my supporters club, so I'm kind of stress free
Yeah.
for this one.
I know, sort it through priority points, but not award priority points for it. I mean, not that priority points should ever matter for away games. Just go back to the day and age of whoever wants and just do a free for all. Um, Obviously, as I said, I really feel Saturday is going to be the bigger of the two games this week coming. How important, given both of our feelings that third place is done, is it that when the games finish on Saturday that we have fourth place secured?
Yeah, I think fourth should really be the minimum that we're walking away with. I mean, like I said, I think third's done now. Even coming away fifth feels like an absolute calamitous end to the season. So Yeah, I think the only saving grace I'm taking is the fact that United haven't won since they beat St Johnstone.
Hmm.
They're yet to win during the split. Admittedly, obviously not had the the easiest start. Obviously, having already played Celtic, so um, yeah, I think we should hopefully maybe take a little bit of grace in that.
Yeah, and Jim Goodwin's not exactly got the best record post split, but neither did Rangers at home. And look what happened. So we're not exactly the team. No, we are the team that most will want to face when they need a record improving. So that does offer a bit of concern. I think as well the important. Some people will say, what's really the big difference between finishing fourth and fifth, given both will bring European football. I think obviously fourth has the kind of advantage of us going into the Europa League and falling into the Conference League if we fall at that hurdle, whereas fifth is Conference League, and if you lose, you're out. And so will just give us a couple of away days in Europe. Obviously, we could cancel all that, win the Scottish Cup, and go straight into the group stages and deny Hibs that, which would be, I don't know if that would be peak Aberdeen or peak Hibs for them to go on that amazing run, finish third, and still not get European group stage football.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say more peak Hibs
Yeah.
than peak Aberdeen because yeah, that requires us to be rather competent for the most part, which I feel like is something we see few and far between at the moment.
Yeah, so maybe I'll cling on to that and end that on a little bit of an optimistic, positive note for this Sunday therapy session. Phil, thank you very much for jumping on after your trip to the beer garden. I know your takeaway is on order as well, so it'll be coming shortly. Thank you to everyone that has hastily joined the live here on YouTube as well. Good to know that we can still get a lot of you joining in on very, very short notice as well. So if you have been watching, remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. We're just 3 away from 2,250. Hopefully we can get that by the Scottish Cup final. If not, the end of the league season would be some achievement. And thank you if you've been listening on audio as well. Remember to follow us wherever you've been tuning in. As I said, we'll try and get back reviewing that Celtic game. If anyone wants to step into Callum and Phil's shoes, let me know. If not, we'll be back after the Dundee United game, reviewing the action from that, and then we'll come back later on next week, in 2 weeks' time, with a Scottish Cup final preview episode, standalone episode for that, and a standalone review of the final league games of the season. So thank you very much once again. We'll see you next time.